Welcome to Athlon U, the college football podcast from Athlon Sports. My name is Braden Gall, and you can follow me on the internet everywhere on the internet at Braden Gall.
And I'm Stephen Lassen. You can also follow me everywhere on the internet because Braden loves social media. And you can also follow and read all my work at athlonsports.com.
We got a big show planned for you today. We're going to look at quarterbacks in every conference, major conferences in the G5. We're going to rank our top three. Basically, we'll give you our all-conference picks in the preseason at this stage. We'll look at guys who are underrated, guys who are overrated, guys that we think can break out, and we'll look at our top national rankings at the end of this conversation as well. Make sure if you are watching, we got some news on the front end here, but if you are watching, of course, on YouTube, please thumbs up, notifications turned on, and share the show. Tell somebody about it. If you are listening on your podcast application of choice, 5-star review. That's how people find us, college football junkies out there. Also, if you are purchasing a magazine from Athlon Sports, of course you can purchase the college football preview magazine. But Stephen, wait, there's more. Thanks for asking. We've got the NFL preview magazine is out and available on newsstands now. See it right there. There it is right there. Got a CJ Stroud cover here in Nashville, Tennessee, which is going to go over great, I'm sure.
It's the AFC South edition.
No,
yeah,
I know, but Cam Ward's kind of small in this picture in Nashville, Tennessee. No, so you got the NFL magazine. I know the fantasy magazine is out as well, so make sure you go check that out. So lots of great magazine content out there for you guys on a newsstand near you. Young people, that is a place where they put a bunch of magazines and sell them to you in person, and you can touch the paper with your hands. I know that's foreign to people, but it's fun. I like reading a magazine with my hands.
I cannot read everything digitally, like books and stuff. Yeah, I have to have the print copy.
Are you you're not a Kindle guy?
No, I can't read. I can't just read I guess I'm just like old school. I'm used to like going to the library, checking out a book, reading the hard copy. So, and of course with our magazine too, I have to have it in the physical sense because I basically carry it everywhere I go. So, taking the 1-year-old to the doctor appointment, the one thing that comes in with me is the Athlon magazine. So.
Not the diaper bag, but the magazine.
Right, forget everything else.
It's like the 1-year-old looks down at your preseason predictions for Kansas and like rips out the page and turns it into a wipe. Like, oh, look at this. This prediction is garbage. I'm wiping my bottom with this. Anyway, no, they're great. As a radio host, of course, I have the magazine with me in every studio I go to. It's fantastic, and it's a great resource. It's great to have. I'm going on vacation coming up in a couple of weeks to an unnamed location. I'm going to go to the second oldest river in the world, Stephen. Did you know? I don't know if you know where that is, but it's the second oldest river in the world. I'm taking the kids up there and the wife. We're going to go do that, and I'm bringing all the magazines with me. All the magazines are coming with me, so very excited, very excited. I also do not read Kindles. I do not. I tried reading the Keith Richards book. It was like 15 years ago. It came out, really huge, thick book. I tried to read the Keith Richards book on like my iPad Mini, like backlit, like a true digital screen. I got to like 350 pages. Like, I can't do this anymore. And I had to go borrow my buddies to like finish it. I can't do that. My wife does the Kindle, can't do the Kindle. I still like books. I still like paper. I know I'm old. It's fine. I don't care.
I'm with you. I guess
write a review for us.
Yeah, you're old. You like reading books on paper. By the way, I'm glad to see that you're going to the river, to the San Marcos River. Our friends down in San Marcos must have invited you. I'm glad to see this.
It's probably not the right week for us to make river in Texas jokes. We probably should hold off on that. As someone who spent 3 years in the hill country in Texas, let's just take a break from the San Marcos River jokes this week, Stephen. Can we do that?
Yes, sure.
I offered an apology.
You did. Yes.
Which means it should be the beef is squashed. And man, do they have good beef in Texas.
They do. That they do, yes.
Go buy a magazine, everybody, is what we're saying. How about some news and notes here? Joe Castiglione, Joe C., almost 30 years as the athletic director of Oklahoma. Stephen, there are athletic directors who may be more influential in the grand scheme of things in college athletics, but the list doesn't come to mind quickly. Not in the modern era, at least.
Yeah, I think just if you made a list of the best athletic directors in college football, I mean, Castiglione is either at the top of that list or near the top of that list. I think it's pretty impressive. His track record of longevity there at Oklahoma, he got there in 1998. And you think about all the changes that college football has gone through. I mean, BCS, the 14 playoff, 12-team playoff, Big 12 expansion, uncertainty, move to the SEC, not only all of the off the field, like administrative stuff, but the change in Oklahoma, like the hiring Bob Stoops, then to Lincoln Riley. Now the decision, the next AD, I guess we'll have to make will be on Brent Venables. But I think just in general, there's been a changing of the guard essentially in the sport the last couple of years. We've seen a lot of people who have been in college athletics for a long time retiring and moving on. And so Castiglione is kind of the next one. I'm fascinated also to see where Oklahoma goes and how this role might evolve in the new era of college football.
I mean, honestly, maybe the most influential at his school of anybody. Nobody was more influential on their school than Joe C was at Oklahoma. I mean, look at the athletics programs across the board. The women's softball program is just insanely successful, off the charts. Much to my 8-year-old softball playing Tennessee volunteer-hearted little girl who was very upset with the walk-off that Carlin Pickens gave up to Oklahoma. But people don't forget. People forget. It's fine. We move on.
This is a random thing here, and I actually saw somebody with a Texas Tech softball jersey one day when I was out, and I was like, I don't think I would have seen that 10 years ago. Is that fair to say?
Well, they've never been to the College World Series.
Right. I know they invested heavily, but I'm saying, like, I don't remember seeing like many just softball jerseys. And like,
if you're talking about a softball jersey, I think it is the growth of the sport. Yes. Absolutely. If you're talking about a Texas Tech jersey, that is the $1 million they spent on Nigeri Kennedy to come to the team this year and have her come back again next year, which, oh, by the way, cost them another 7-figure contract. But softball, for people that do not know, the women's softball tournament gets higher TV ratings than the men's baseball College World Series. And this year, I want to say the Tennessee UCLA game that was a real crazy ending where the girl missed the home plate or whatever. It was super chaotic, but it was on a Sunday. Had more rate, like the viewership for the final was higher than the Stanley Cup final games 1, 2, and 3. Like women's softball beats the Stanley Cup final, which is an insane thing to think about. It's incredibly successful, and Oklahoma, a big part of that, of course, being a mainstay national champion in that sport. I just think my observation about Joe C is that he's the last of a dying breed, and I don't mean like actually dying. I mean like he's the last of a generation of type of athletic director who was there for 30 years, who would shepherd the organization through sort of smaller changes, but sort of had the same job by and large for most of the time. A lot of times they were former longtime head football coaches. Mm-hmm. You know, Barry Alvarez became the athletic director, and Frank Broyles at Arkansas became a really important athletic director after being a head coach. And that's sort of how the progression worked. That ain't the case anymore. You now have like shrewd business people who are part lawyer, part agent, part fundraiser, which is a very different skill set than, you know, when Barry Alvarez took over, and I think, frankly, when Joe C took over. But I'm curious what the role looks like 10 years from now because of the general manager role being implemented underneath the AD and some of those having control to hire and fire football coaches and manage the entire athletic. Like football is almost too big now that it needs its own like mini athletic director, which is what the general manager is kind of turning into. So it'll be interesting to see. Like, I just think these guys are like assistant coaches now, men and women. They just like, you get the job, you work there for 3 years, you implement some cool stuff, and then you move on to a bigger job. Like it's very much like an assistant coach and not anymore like a guy or a woman who's been in the community for 30 years in different roles and kind of, you know, logically elevates to the top of the mountain, which it used to be the athletic director.
So where does this go from here? Like, do you think Oklahoma is the next Joe C at Oklahoma, the next athletic director? Do you think this role is significantly different? I mean, given that they have hired Jim Nagy, they've hired some other front office personnel. Keep in mind, there is a rather large football decision looming this year if they don't have a great year. So, I mean, does the AD still hold the same amount of power as they did before?
I mean, in general, I would say no, but I do think it's case by case. And like, in Oklahoma, Joe C had the power over Jim Nagy.
Yeah.
But in the future, what will that role have? I don't think we know. And I think it is like Cal and Stanford might have different power structures than Alabama, you know, or whatever. Yeah. So I think Greg Byrne makes decisions at Alabama around the football team for now. So it's drastically changed. And it does feel a little bit like the coaching. Like coaches are just like, God, this game is so different than it used to be. I don't want to be here anymore. And I could see athletic directors being like, I didn't have to worry about congressional settlements and revenue sharing agreements and the same kind of complaining about change and evolution that most people make when things that they love begin to change. And it just kind of is what it is. We're in a new frontier. And Joe C is one of the last of this sort of lifer role that had the role for that long at one place. And it's just going to be very different, I think, in that role across the board, I think. So yeah. I don't know about Oklahoma specifically.
I think my working theory on this is ADs are still going to hold probably roughly about the same power, but I do think there is going to be a little bit shifted to the GMs and the front office types there. And also having those front office types is actually probably a good thing, because if you have a coaching change, you already have somebody that's entrenched in personnel and you can hit the ground running on the transfers, your roster. So it will be also like, is there some sort of like, does the GM hold some sway in whether the coach comes back? Like, are the GM and the head coach married together? So just a lot of fascinating power dynamics I think we're still trying to understand in this new era.
Yep, no question about it. A couple other pieces of news here. I guess the charges in the case against Jake Retzlaff have been dropped, and they are no longer going forward. However, he is transferring from BYU, and this happened kind of middle of last week, so we didn't get it into the show. But he's deciding to transfer because he was kicked out of school because of the student conduct policy, which involves, wait for it, premarital relations on campus, which Stephen, I just can't believe that happens on a college campus in America in 2025. I for one am appalled.
Yeah, it is the honor code at BYU though. So, it's
you better kick every single player on that team off the team then.
I guess he got caught is the problem here for BYU.
Sounds like he might have done more than that, but
Right. So he was facing basically a suspension for almost like over half the season. So the transfer makes a ton of sense here. So I think the question is like, how does it hurt BYU? And I think first of all, it's worth taking into account they have three quarterbacks: McKay Hillstead, who's played at Utah State, he transferred in; Trayson Bourget, who played at Western Michigan, he's also started some games; and they have Bear Bachmeier on the all-name team for sure, but he transferred in from Stanford. So they have three transfers vying for the starting job. Two were there last season, and Bachmeier just arrived.
And they just land like the highest rated recruit in the country or something like that for 2 years from now or whatever it is.
Yes, that is a good point. So Ryder Lyons is coming in, but it's not next year. He's going on an LDS mission, so he will be there in 2027. So they have a little bit of quarterback uncertainty. I think BYU can probably get good quarterback play out of somebody here. I think in general, though, like we talk about the margins in the Big 12 and how tight it is. If you thought BYU was probably a top 5 to 6 team in the conference, I think they're a lot closer to like that 8, 9, 10 level now. I think that's just the clustering, these conferences of the Big 12 with so many close games. It hurts them at the margins. I still think they're going to be a bowl team, but I think it definitely hurts in the big picture.
Oh, all the people that had them projected preseason top 10, top 15, top 20, which we kind of like chuckled at because we have them, I think, at number 30. This was with Jake Retzlaff. We have him at number 30 in our rankings. So certainly we feel like, honestly, not the way we want to go about feeling vindicated, but it is sort of like we feel like, they're definitely closer to, 6, 7, 8 wins than they were repeating last year. I will say, though, I don't think they're in that much of a different situation than they were at this time last year.
That's
right?
True.
Like they came into last year with some questions and some question marks and some good options and some interesting, and they got good quarterback play and developed a guy, and he turned into a pretty good player. And so they've got some talent on the roster. We'll see what happens. They're not going to bottom out or anything because of this, but they're they are not repeating last year. But I don't think they were doing that with Retzlaff, frankly. So
it was always going to be hard to replicate the 29 gained turnovers. That's pretty fortunate. It's hard to do that from year to year. Yep. Hard to win close games in the Big 12. To your point, I don't expect them to bottom out, but I do think we've seen their win total in Vegas and the sports books has dropped, I think, to like 6.5, 7. That seems maybe a touch low, but I don't think their Big 12 title hopes weren't necessarily just riding on Jake Retzlaff. I think there's a good team and a good core there, which is why I think they can overcome that. I would not consider them a Big 12 title contender at this point.
No. What other news we got? We got some injuries, and the Pac-12 finally adds Texas State. What else we got?
Yeah, so the Pac-12 officially added Texas State before the 4th of July. They are the 8th football member of the Pac-12. Some rumblings out there that they may look at a 9th football member, and some reports have indicated could be just a football only school. So perhaps this is Memphis. Rice, UTSA has been mentioned as well. So still out there with expansion. The Sun Belt still looking for a 14th member, or deciding to play with 13 members for now. One big piece of injury news we did see over the 4th of July weekend was Notre Dame offensive lineman Charles Jagusah. And he was supposed to be the starter at tackle last year, got hurt in the preseason, missed most of the year, came back in the playoff and played pretty well. He was probably going to start at guard for Notre Dame. He had an arm injury on a UTV. So he's out indefinitely. It's a pretty big, I think it's a pretty big loss for Notre Dame. Can they overcome that? Their offensive line, I think it's the best in the country coming into the year. Do think it's a bit of a setback, and it sounds like he'll be back at some point, but maybe not early in the year.
What kind of an arm injury?
A fractured arm a fractured bone. Sorry, so a fractured bone in his arm.
Well, those are not like those will heal quickly, but bones actually heal fairly quickly. So, if it's Tommy John surgery, that's very different than when I suppose an all-terrain vehicle probably flips over and lands on top of you. That would be my, or you got thrown off of it and maybe landed hard on something like that. Just kids, be safe out there. Yeah. So, how many people have injured off Notre Dame's starting like offense already? Like, aren't there a couple already?
I think there's like 2. Yeah.
Before camp's even open.
Yeah. The interesting thing about that is if you think about Notre Dame's offensive line, they lost Rocco Spindler to Nebraska, Pat Coogan transferred to Indiana, and Sam Pendleton transferred to Tennessee. So they've lost 3 potential guys who could have started or played in depth roles, and they're still maybe the best offensive line in college football. I think that says a lot about how good they feel about their starting 5, that they could lose a couple guys and maybe even Jagusah for a while and still have a good offensive line. So just another reason to like the Fighting Irish's chances again this year.
Or a reason to be concerned. If they keep losing players. All right, let's get into our quarterback conversation. And so for the sake of this discussion, speaking of Notre Dame, let's leave CJ Carr and let's leave, Malik Murphy, who's at Oregon State. Let's leave sort of all the indies, the independents, and the G5 sort of into one group of like non-Power 4 conferences. We're going to go through the Power 4. I want to give our all-conference team picks by each of us. And we'll go through and we'll kind of give you some of the breakout underrated names that we really are looking forward to, the most interesting player at the position, the most interesting man in the Big Ten, for example, those kinds of things. And then we'll dive into some of the G5/non P4, and then we'll get into our national conversation at the end. So we did this kind of quickly early in the spring, like January, February. And I don't know if my rankings or my ratings or my order has changed a whole lot, but I do think I think the analysis has tweaked a little bit for me. I think the SEC is the best quarterback conference in the country right now. I think pretty clearly, if Blake Shapen and Jackson Arnold and Bo Prabula are like 12, 13, and 14 in my rankings, you're pretty deep conference at quarterback. Probably, I mean, there's a chance that they have 4 or 5 first-round draft picks in that league, first-round draft picks. I think the Big 12 is very, very balanced. I think there's a lot of all the good teams have really good quarterback play. If you look across the board at TCU, at Baylor, at Kansas State, at Iowa State, at Arizona State, Texas Tech, Kansas, these are all probably the top 6 or 7 teams in the conference. The ACC is a whole lot of question marks for me. There's some really good names at the top, but it's a whole lot of question marks. And I actually think the Big Ten is severely lacking in high-end talent outside of Aller. But I think they go like 10, 11, 12 deep with like breakout candidates. I think there's a lot of upside in the Big Ten that's really intriguing. And I bet you 2 or 3 of them develop into stars. I don't know which ones yet. So that's sort of my broad look at the 4 conferences. I wanted to get your reaction to sort of that view of it and how accurate that might be, how much you disagree with that. What do you think?
I would agree with probably most of what you had there. I've got the SEC as probably the deepest and the best quarterback conference. I'd probably put the Big 12 2, maybe Big 10 3, and then the ACC 4. I think what jumped out to me in doing my first draft of these was sort of the Big 10 quarterbacks, because I think in the SEC, I think it's pretty defined like which quarterbacks we think are going to have a breakout year. There's two kind of established stars returning. And I think in the Big Ten, you go into the year, and maybe we'll disagree about this, but I think most people will have Drew Aller first. You get into Julian Sayin, Fernando Mendoza, Raiola, Dante Moore, um, Bryce Underwood. Like, there's a lot of quarterbacks in this conference with the ability to break out and sort of change the dynamic of this conversation quite a bit. So I think maybe the most interesting group of quarterbacks is what happens with the Big Ten, but I think the SEC and Big 12 got the best two, and there's a ton of question marks, to your point, in the ACC.
And 2 first-round picks and maybe the best quarterback in America in the ACC.
Yeah.
Possibly. But I agree. And like what stands out to me with the Big Ten is like 5-star recruits. Some high 4 stars, but like guys with pedigree, guys that are big-time prospects. And Aiden Childs was a big-time prospect coming out of high school when he went to Oregon State, now at Michigan State. Underwood is obviously an elite prospect. You've got Sayin, Dante Moore, Nico, Raiola, all 5-star guys, I think, coming out of high school. So a lot of upside talent, unproven, but one or two of these guys is going to turn into a star. And it's, it's easy money to say it's Ohio State and Michigan's quarterbacks, or Oregon, I guess you have to put in that same boat, or maybe even USC potentially. But I think there's a lot of intrigue in the Big Ten. I just don't know. I don't think we know what it is just yet. So, although it sounds like we're going to have some disagreement in the Big Ten. So you want to start? How about we start there then? Who is you want to do 3 or 4? You could do 4 if you want, because I know the Athlon way is 4 conference teams, right?
It is, because conferences are bigger and better than ever. So I've expanded the all conference team. So I'll start at 4. And I'll work my way to 1. At 4, I've got Fernando Mendoza. I am a big believer in Kirk Cignetti in this Indiana offense. I also think Mendoza probably a little bit underrated for some of the things he had to work through on Cal's offense. So I like him at 4. I've got Luke Altmaier at 3. I saw a step forward last season in his overall play, almost 3,000 passing yards, 22 touchdowns, gives you something on the ground. At 2, I'm going Julian Sayin. And I know it's a bit of a projection, but insert Ohio State starting quarterback. Odds are pretty good they're going to rank near the top of college football if they start 14, 15 games in terms of stats and production. So I think Sayin, talent, offense, supporting cast, he'll be there at the end of the season. And at 1, I'm going Drew Aller. I saw a step forward last year. Still think he needs to play better against some of the ranked teams. That's not all of his fault. His numbers, were better in certain areas last season. So going into this year where Penn State's made an effort to improve the receivers, second year under Andy Koltanecki, it says he should take a step forward and be the Big Ten's top quarterback.
So I will be very consistent across the board with all these conferences with players like Julian Sayin, Dante Moore, who are stepping in for the first time with no real experience or track record to speak of. I am hedging a little bit further down the rankings on all of them. That's the names like Ty Simpson, at Alabama. There are names that are stepping into these roles that we know will probably be successful players. But every now and then there's a Kyle McCord, or there's plenty of Alabama guys that haven't quote unquote hit that were 5-star recruits. And, Gunnar Stockton's another one at Georgia. So I'm going to hedge a little bit more conservatively on those and kind of have those names a little bit further down the list. Here are my Big Ten all conference picks. Number 4, Nico Iamaleava at UCLA, 10 wins, 5-star talent, really, really big arm, lots of athletic ability. Don't know what the surrounding and supporting cast is going to look like for him, but he's taken a team to the playoff. Nobody else on this list is even close to that. So I've got Nico at number 4. I've got Dylan Raiola at number 3. A little bit more projection here with him, but he's got a full year under his belt. And there's a lot of guys that I think in the modern era of college football don't get the credit for just doing the thing they're supposed to do in their first year as a starter, which is sort of get experience, learn how to play the position, and set themselves up for a big breakout season. I think Raiola would be my 3rd-team all-conference quarterback in the Big Ten. I'm going number 2, Luke Altmaier. I'm going to give some love to the Illinois guy. Like, he makes plays. His ceiling might not be as high as some of these other guys. Dante Moore's ceiling is much higher. I really love Mendoza at Indiana. Saying ceiling is really high. Williams and Underwood, a lot of these guys in this conference have a lot of upside and a huge ceiling. But Luke Altmaier is the most proven, dependable commodity, not named Drew Aller in this conference. So I'm going Luke Altmaier at number 2, and give me Drew Aller at number 1. He started like a gazillion games. He never turns the football over. Does he make a ton of plays down the field? No. Maybe the offense is different this year and that part's better. But outside of that, he does everything exactly the way you want it in a college football program. So I'm going Drew Aller, number 1. What say you?
Dylan Raiola was probably the one that I wrestled with the most, including him at number 4. There was also a part of me that wanted to include DeMond Williams at 4 or 3, just because I'm very, very high on him. And I know you're probably sitting home going, yeah, Dante Moore. Yeah, I think he's in the conversation too. So I think I can't really fault like anything. Like we agree on Aller. Altmaier, my question is like, they got everybody back on the offensive line. They have some turnover at receiver. Like, what is the upside here? And I think that's kind of what you're getting at is you got Sayin, you've got Dante Moore, you've got DeMond Williams, Raiola. I think you're too high in Nico, and I don't think it's a talent thing. I think it's a production thing for me. I just don't see it with UCLA's offense. I mean, I think their offensive line, receivers, and running backs are all worse than what he had at Tennessee. I think Tino Sunseri is an upgrade over Eric Bieniemy, but I'm going to have to see it. I think the talent is there, but I think the supporting cast is very questionable.
Well, and if you're doing this to project forward, I don't think Nico can carry that offense to an all-conference performance. But that's, like, to me, this is a preseason All-American vote. My preseason All-Big Ten vote is who are the best players currently, who are the most balance of talent and proven and production and ability and, whatever. Like, he's one of the only guys on this list that took a team to the playoff, and he won 10 games last year. And his numbers weren't elite, but they weren't bad either. He took care of the football most of the time. And I think the whole thing at Tennessee is just complicated for both sides. I think he'll be clear of head, hopefully, outside. What's interesting is I would have – so I have Mendoza at 5. So I really like Mendoza. I've got him right after. And then the next part of my list is Dante Moore, Julian Sayin, DeMond Williams, and Mayava. Mayava. I can't ever say his name. Say the name for me.
Jaden Mayavia.
Mayavia. All of those guys have a chance to be really good players. All those guys have a chance to break out and perform. I would have Bryce Underwood at the bottom of that list, and then you got to sort of slide in a Gronkowski somehow. You got to slip him into this conversation as well. So it's just a bunch of really talented guys at big programs with a lot of talent that are going to be very productive. But right now, I cannot make the case. Like, I think Dante Moore is going to be the best of that group because I think the system and because of the experience, I just think he's a really great player. I think Williams is going to be awesome at Washington. I just think you're sort of projecting Ohio State numbers, not the quarterback's numbers to some degree. And I think that's where I got to be. I'm going to skew towards what you've proven so far a little bit more than projecting what you could be on a preseason team. Postseason All Big Ten team, if Julian Sayin's the best quarterback, he'll get my top vote.
Yeah, I see where you're going. I think, you mentioned Gronkowski too. I think what's interesting is like, when was the last time we talked about an Iowa quarterback maybe in the discussion to be in the top 5? But I think he's legitimately like good enough to be there. We saw this at South Dakota State with his rushing and his passing. Now he is coming off an offseason injury. We'll have to make sure he's 100% when we start fall practice here. But I think there's, probably 12 quarterbacks in this conference. It may seem like a steep number, but if any of those 12 earned a spot on the top 4 all conference teams at the end of the year, I wouldn't be surprised. I also like Malik Washington of Maryland, the true freshman. I think for Maryland, like, why not? Like, you probably won't be very good this year anyway, so play the true freshman and build around him. I think just look at those quarterbacks at the top, like DeMond Williams, Bryce Underwood, and Dante Moore probably have the most upside. I think Raiola probably in that conversation too.
Don't you think Raiola's already ahead of that whole group, having started a whole season?
I do. I also think there's another level that he can get to. And I think Nebraska made a very smart decision to bring on Dana Holgorsen at the end of last year, and they've upgraded at receiver this offseason too. So I like where they're going for sure.
I just think he's more proven. He started a full season in the Big Ten, second year in the system, and has a much better throwing arm than those other guys. I just think he's a more accurate, like, from the pocket. Like these other, like, I'm with you on Williams. Like, I think if you're talking most underrated And sort of when you look at national lists and you look at all the listicles that are out there this time of year, like he's down in the 10, 11, 12 range. And I think he's more in like the 6, 7, 8 range. I think Gronowski and Childs are 11 and 12 for me in that range. I think Bryce Underwood is by far the most interesting. Like if you're just saying which one's the most interesting, it is a 5-star true freshman who flips from a power program in the South to go to Michigan and to start for a coach who's sort of dealing with off the field stuff on a program that won the national championship 2 years ago. And I just think that is by far the most interesting story of this position in this conference. The one that's going to not get a lot of coverage is like, can Drew Aller do the next level thing? Right? Like it's not, we all know he's really good, if not great. The question is, can he be elite? Can he be the guy who puts the team on his shoulders and carries them in critical moments? And while it's not fair necessarily to judge him in the fourth quarter on the road against Ohio State or whatever, or down by 3 touchdowns, it's not his fault against Oregon. Like he still has yet to do that thing in a championship setting. So like, is that asking too much of one player? Maybe. But Penn State, it's all, as we've talked about all summer, it's all set up for Penn State to be that good and to give him a chance to make that play in that moment this year.
Yeah, and I think some of it is not his fault. Like if I remember, I forget which game it was last year that I was watching, and I'm sitting there going, "There's nobody open. Like, what is he supposed to do? I mean, if you have nobody open, you're supposed to force the ball." In Big Ten games in 2023, he completed 57% of his passes, and he had a yards per attempt of 6. So last year under Andy Koltanecki, he upped that number in Big Ten games to 68% and also increased his yards per attempt to 8.1. So if you just want to look at just like the basic accounting stats here, like he was a better quarterback. Now I know stats aren't necessarily everything, but I think you have to kind of project a little bit here. And I know you're not necessarily doing that with your list, but I would feel confident that another step forward is coming if you give me another offseason to work under Andy Koltanecki and you add in 3 receivers that are, I would say probably better than outside of Tyler Warren. There are upgrades for your receiving corps at Penn State.
What's funny is if you take out the Oregon and USC game from last year, he threw 3 interceptions against USC. Also, one of his, like, it wasn't a great performance, but he also made a couple of really big plays in that game to win the game. Tyler Warren, off the charts in that game. Going to be a huge missing part to the offense this year, that's for sure. I do trust the second year of Koltanecki to do the job with Aller. But if you take away just those 2 games, that's 5 interceptions. He has thrown a grand total of 5 interceptions in 2 full seasons. Protecting the football is still job number 1, and he does that extremely well for Penn State. So, and I think, look, to your point, like 8.5 yards per attempt this year, like clearly better in terms of production, but there's going to be another tier. They're going to ask him to do more, even though there might be more talent outside on the offense. There's still great running game. Tyler Warren's not there. You still have to, like, this is national championship or bust. That's it for Penn State. And it's not fair to him to grade him on that scale, but that's the scale that this organization has put itself on. So
do you think there is something to maybe the idea that as good as Tyler Warren was, their receivers weren't very good, but maybe you aren't as reliant on one player, which forces you to maybe do some different things offensively. Maybe it opens up some things in the passing game. You take some different chances.
So it's funny you asked this. As a Green Bay Packers fan, I have a theory I've been workshopping for a long time. It's called the Jordan Love theory, which is that Jordan Love is good because the system is really good, and is good because there's no number 1 mouth you have to feed. And it's good because there's so much talent spread out into every position, not just 1 tight end, but 2 good tight ends, not 1 running back, but 2 running backs. 5 different receivers can catch a touchdown pass on any given play. Matt LaFleur's offense. It's sort of, what is it? Like good at everything, master of none. I'm butchering the phrase here. I can't remember what the phrase
I know what
is.
you're, yeah.
But it's that I think it's good for a rookie quarterback in the NFL to not have that number 1 diva guy calling for the ball all the time, and that you don't have one read that you're locking into. I don't think that was the problem for Penn State last year. I think it's either that you have one guy that you are force feeding because he's so good, Tyler Warren, or you don't have any other options. So you force feed the one guy you trust, Tyler Warren. So I don't know. In this case, I don't think it applies to the Jordan Love theory. But I think I understand what you're saying, and so I don't necessarily agree with this particular situation because I just don't think they had other options. Like there just were no other options. So
Yeah.
he ended up just getting all the targets.
Yeah. Great for college fantasy. But Penn State could use a little bit more weapons on the outside.
All right, let's go to the ACC.
All right, I'll throw up my list here. I don't think we're going to have any disagreement at the top, but I'll start at number 4. I got the guy that is piloting the Athlon U team of 2025. That is Haynes King of Georgia Tech. I love the development that we've seen out of Haynes King the last couple of years. Went from kind of being the odd man out at Texas A&M to being a potential all-ACC quarterback. Banged up last year, should be 100%. That's good news for Georgia Tech's offense. Buster Faulkner, Haynes King, working some magic there. It's a fun combo. I've got Kevin Jennings of SMU at 3. Breakout season last year. I think he'll be more comfortable in year 2. There's also a lot of turnover on SMU's supporting cast. If you want to be picky, in 3 games against ranked opponents last year, 5.4 yards per attempt, 5 interceptions. Those numbers have to improve if SMU, with a tougher schedule, wants to get back to the ACC championship. I've got Carson Beck at 2. Biggest wild card maybe in college football for Miami's playoff hopes. The early season games against Florida, Notre Dame. We'll see how healthy he is. If he's healthy, could be in contention to be one of the best 10 quarterbacks in college football. And at number 1, easy call. That's Cade Klubnik. Big step forward last year. Loaded receiving core. 2nd in the ACC in touchdown passes. 3rd in total offense. And 13 completions of 40-plus yards. So we wondered coming into the year if he would take that step forward. He did, and Clemson returned to the playoff and won the ACC.
It's a good list. I like that list. It's close to being right.
I think I know where we're going to differ here.
Number 4 on my list, best quarterback, my preseason. Okay, how about that? Here is my preseason all ACC quarterback picks for 2025. Number 4, Darian Mensah, Duke. Over 9.5 yards per attempt last year. I thought with that offense, which was replacing a lot from the year before, in his first year as a starter, I thought he was really efficient, protected the football, did not turn the ball over, didn't bring a lot to the table on the ground, but a little bit. And I think his transfer and his dollar figure in the portal tells you all you need to know about how good he's going to be. He is my breakout. He's my most underrated. He is my 4th team all-ACC preseason pick right now. Haynes King, my Jackets at number 3. Here's it's hard to put into words what makes Haynes King good and valuable because the numbers aren't as good as Jennings at SMU. The numbers through the air are not particularly special, but he is just a dude, man. He is willing to put the body on the line. He picks up tough yards when you need him to. He's like everything Riley Leonard wants to be. And so so I've got Haynes King, who's been on this long journey from big-time Texas high school prospect quarterback to now Georgia Tech, running what I think is one of the more fun offenses in all of college football. An offense, by the way, that doesn't want him to throw it around. So that's part of why his numbers are like that. Number 2, Carson Beck. I agree with you. Totally a huge wild card, I think, on the national championship stage. If he's great again and top 10 pick good, the way we saw maybe coming into the season last year, Miami could be very special this year. If he's the guy that sort of that really missed Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers and on 3rd down struggled against tougher defenses last year, and that translates to Miami, maybe he's not a top 10 pick or a 1st-round pick, and I still think he's too talented and not have it number 2 on this list, and Cade Klubnik at number 1, no question for me. Progress. A player that you and I have talked so much about over the years as being a guy when are we going to see it? When are we going to see it? Well, we saw it in spades last year, and it culminated with one of the best performances I have seen of any playoff quarterback on the road against Texas. Fantastic showing by Cade Klubnik, and some of the losses that Clemson had last year, not a lot of them on him. So I think it's clear Klubnik is 1. I've got Beck 2, Haynes King 3, and I'm going to go Mensah at 4. I think Jennings, maybe I owe some explanation about why I wouldn't have Jennings higher. This is going to sound like an insult, but it's not meant to be. But maybe I need you to kind of tell me what you think here. He is a group of 5 quarterback playing on a program that was a group of 5 team that is now not a group of 5 quarterback on a group of 5 team. He just reminds me from a skill set standpoint of a guy who is like a superstar at a group of 5 program, and that when they get into big games against elite teams, not no disrespect, not Louisville, but like teams like Penn State, it crashed down last year. So I don't want to take too much from one game. I still have him at number 5. I think he's the 5th best quarterback in the ACC. I think he's a top 25 quarterback in the country. Like, I think he's a really good player. He just reminds me skill-wise, talent-wise, height, size, strengths, and weaknesses. He just reminds me of like an elite, great group of 5 quarterback. And that's not meant to be an insult, but I can see how it might be taken as one.
So I would say I have Darian Mensah at 5 in my quarterback ranking. So we're not that far off on where we have some of these guys slotted. I think on Jennings, one thing that came to my mind when I was putting my list together, I thought about that ACC championship game, and I thought about how SMU fell behind. They fought back, and then I went back and looked at his numbers, and 304 yards, 3 touchdowns. That's pretty dang good against the defense. That is
no, it was not. It was all guard. Lasso. Every chance in the first half, he had to get his team back into the game. He made a boneheaded decision. Those numbers are all because they were so far down, and they all stockpiled numbers in the second half. Now, again, that doesn't take away from a great season.
Sure.
Running a very conducive offense to productivity at the quarterback position. But he turned the ball over against good teams. And in the first half of that game, it was like I was shaking my head going, what are you doing?
All fair points. The other thing to think about here, too, is, yes, I know statistics aren't everything when judging quarterbacks, but they do take some count here. I think he actually saved SMU's season last year because Preston Stone was not 100% early on. They almost lost to Nevada in the season opener. Now, you know me, I'm a big Jeff Choate guy. I think Nevada is on the right track. That was pretty surprising to see SMU struggling with Nevada in the first game last year. And they struggled against BYU. BYU won that game. Jennings took over the starting job. And then they went on to make the playoffs. So I guess I just give him credit. Like, I like the Lashley scheme. I think SMU's done a good job at bringing in some talent through the portal. They've got good weapons. I think the scheme it's definitely like if you're thinking about numbers, I think the scheme will give him the numbers to be in the mix to be all ACC. But certainly, when I look at this list of quarterbacks in the ACC, I mean, I see a lot of questions, and I think that also kind of makes me feel good about Jennings being a top 4 quarterback because I think like Eli Holstein at Pitt started great, got hurt. Kyron Drones, I don't know what to think because of the personnel turnover. Coordinator Castellanos at Florida State, a lot of potential in this offense. So if you told me he didn't finish in the top 4, I wouldn't be surprised. But I also right now don't know these quarterbacks. There's just a ton of questions here in the ACC.
I do think the top 5 are pretty clear, and we have the same top 5. So it's not that I'm not knocking the guy. I'm just, if you're asking me who do I think has like big boy, stand in the pocket, play power 4 football, I just think Mensah is the better player. And I think Jennings does a lot of things that a traditional G5 quarterback does. And in the moments where you wanted to see more from him, it didn't come out, right? It didn't show up as much. And so that's the only knock. And this is one of those moments where I find myself being very negative about somebody, and it's not meant to be because I think he's the 5th best quarterback and a top 25 player at his position in the country. And like, I think all this stuff. I have Castellanos as the most interesting just because if he keeps running his mouth, I'm here for it. Like, just keep talking trash about Alabama's defense, man. I love that about him. I think Eli Holstein's the most interesting, also the most underrated, and could be a breakout player here. You mentioned when you go look at before he gets hurt, like weren't they 7-0? Like they were 7-0. He didn't play 3 of the last 4 games, and against Louisville where they got blown out, he only threw 5 passes. Like his numbers, like he had 3 touchdown passes in every game in the first 5 games to start the season, over 10 yards per attempt multiple times. This guy came out of nowhere and was doing things with not a lot of support for that offense and had them winning games. And he was making plays at the end of tough games. So I think Holstein is number like 6 or 7 for me with Castellanos and Miller Moss at Louisville. That would be my other one that could be a super interesting breakout because I trust Jeff Brom to do Jeff Brom things with him. And so I don't know where to put Chandler Morris at Virginia. Really good season for North Texas last year, but that Virginia team is woof. So I don't know, but he's a good player. You mentioned drones. I don't know what's going to happen at North Carolina between Lopez and Johnson. I think CJ Bailey's really interesting. I think he's an interesting player to keep an eye on at NC State. Otherwise, it's a lot of names we don't like. We're not sure who's going to win the job at Syracuse. Maybe it's Collins. We're not sure who's going to win the job at other places. So it's a really weird. Devin Brown actually could be a nice player, pedigree 5-star at Cal, as long as he doesn't wear a weird number.
Yeah, he's wearing that. Was it 33? Kind of throws you off if you just tuned into a game and see somebody taking snaps that number. Yeah, I think Cal's interesting. Devin Brown and also the 5-star JKS. I probably would mispronounce his name today. So one of those two winning the job, but also Syracuse, because they have Ricky Collins, the LSU transfer, and Stephen Jelly, the Notre Dame transfer. I bring that up because this offense last year produced big numbers. So whoever the starter is, in theory, if they're end up being capable, that helps Syracuse with a tough schedule. I had Chandler Morris, Castellanos, and Miller Moss as probably three of my most interesting quarterbacks. And I think Castellanos is probably the one that I keep coming back to. And I think about where Florida State is. They're coming off this horrible season. They went into the portal. They had to get a quarterback. They picked Castellanos, who transferred before the season ended at BC. He got better as a passer under Bill O'Brien. He fits this offense, but he's like, they're counting on him. Like, is he going to be good enough to go take Florida State from 2 wins to 8 wins? Like, there is a ton of pressure on him. And you got Miller Moss, who was also benched at USC, transfers to Louisville, a quarterback genius in Jeff Brom. Like, I trust Jeff Brom to get the most out of him. But it's just trying to figure out like all these situations, and he was benched. How does it work out at Louisville? What does Castellanos? There's a lot of intrigue for these quarterbacks.
It's Gus Malzahn, Nick Marshall is what it is, right? Like Nick,
yes.
That's what I think. If you want to look at a blueprint for Castellanos, I think you look at the Nick Marshall season, which was 2013, where they went to the national championship game. I don't think that's going to happen. I'm just saying he's a smaller player, and that's how they used him in that season, was in Malzahn's offense. All right, Big 12, where are you going?
All right, we'll start at 4. I will go with Rocco Becht of Iowa State. I think there is my biggest concern, I guess, with him is the turnover at receiver. I still think growth and development, I think he'll be there for all conference honors at the end of the season. I've got Sawyer Robertson at 3. I think when you talk about underrated quarterbacks this preseason, I think Sawyer Robertson is at the top of the list. Quiet 2024 breakout season, really came on strong in the second half, full off season to work under Jake Spavital. I think he's going to get even better this season. At 2, I've got Avery Johnson. I think maybe the most upside of a lot of quarterbacks in this conference. I think he's got to get better as a passer, but we saw him get banged up last season when they played Colorado. I think the rushing will be there again, especially with Matt Wells calling plays, and I expect him to take a step forward as a passer. At number 1, I've got Sam Leavitt. I think the big time leap that we saw in play came into the season with a lot of upside. He got hurt early. Then he sort of realized that potential down the stretch. And also now with no Cam Scattleboo, Leavitt will become the focal point of that Arizona State offense. So I've got Sam Leavitt at 1, Avery Johnson 2, Sawyer Robertson 3, and Rocco Becht at 4.
I like that list. I agree that that's the same 4. But I don't agree with the order. Number 4 on my list for preseason, all Big 12, all conference picks. Number 4, Baylor, Sawyer Robertson. You guys have heard me talk about Baylor. You've heard me talk about this player. Everything you just said, I completely agree with. I think he breakout season last year and has a chance to do it again this year for Baylor. So I got Sawyer Robertson at number 4. Rocco Becht at number 3. I agree. I'm worried about the receivers, but that's not necessarily what we're talking about. I'm talking about who's better right now. Who would I rather have right now, and who has proven it? Iowa State is going to be battling for a Big 12 championship spot again. They got there last year, and he delivered in the clutch every time they asked him to. Almost every time they asked him to in the fourth quarter, he played big in huge moments against Iowa. Every time they asked him to, he made big plays. Number 2, Sam Leavitt, Arizona State. I think he's a really, really, really good player. I don't think he was the elite reason that they were the best team last year in the Big 12. I think that's the running back. I think he put up some really big numbers, against Kansas. He put up really big numbers against Oklahoma State. I need to see it. He played very well against Iowa State in the Big 12 championship game. That was a total blowout. I don't think he was the driving force of the offense, but obviously I have him at number 2, so I think very highly of him. But I think this is the same exact thing that Dylan Raiola did at Nebraska. Everything you wanted to see from Avery Johnson at Kansas State last year in his first season as a starter, he showed me. Some growing pains early in the year, 2 years into the year, he some things he had to work on. But at the end of the season, he was figuring out how to blend his athleticism with his arm. He was figuring out how to win and make big plays in the fourth quarter. He only got better. And while they're replacing some pieces on the offensive line and DJ Giddens, I get all of that. Avery Johnson is going to be a superstar. And he is number one on my ballot, first team all Big 12 preseason. And I think he's top 10 quarterback in the country.
It's bold, but I think that's probably if I don't have Avery Johnson in the top 10, he's not too far outside of that. I keep coming back to the idea that if somebody just has a massive season, they blow up statistically, we're picking Kansas State to win the Big 12. But if there's one quarterback, I think we've talked about, we talked about like the Dante Moore, the DeMond Williams, like some of those, Bryce Underwood. I think Avery Johnson's on that list. Like he is single-handedly probably good enough to elevate his game to take Kansas State to the Big 12 championship game, win it, and then they would be a difficult matchup for somebody in the playoff because of how good and how capable he is of carrying them. So I like to call it one, but I would still stick with Sam Leavitt.
I mean, obviously that's what you did. So here's the other thing. I have Jalen Daniels at 5, Josh Hoover at 6, Baron Morton at 7, Devon Dampier at 8. I think the top 8 are the top half of this league is fascinating. The bottom half is far more question marks. I think Noah Fafita, Connor Wigman, Caden Salter, even Sorsby at Cincinnati, all those guys have some intrigue about them. Sorsby certainly played the most last year at his school. Dampier, I think, could have a monster season with that offense at Utah, but he's got to stay healthy because he wants to run. He's a guy who had over 1,000 yards at New Mexico. Hoover probably is getting the most disrespect in this conversation because his numbers were really, really good and very similar to Morton and Robertson and Beck in terms of their breakout and their numbers last year. So Hoover's probably the one. Daniels, I didn't really know what to do with because I think on talent and when he's at his best, he's probably number 3 behind Avery Johnson and Sam Leavitt. But the turnovers and sort of the haven't seen it in 2 years kind of thing, and we only saw it in the last month of the season. Like, I think 5 is right for him because I just think I don't know where to put him, honestly.
I would have him 5 or 6. I think Hoover and Daniels are your next 2. I think to your point, I might be overlooking Josh Hoover a little bit. I mean, last year put up some monster numbers. I mean, almost 4,000 passing yards,
right,
27 touchdowns, and I think there's a chance that he's even better this year. So I think there's, I think 6 quarterbacks you could consider for a top 4 spot. If you wanted to put Dampier in that conversation, I'm not necessarily against it. I think his rushing is going to be a nightmare for other teams in the Big 12, and they're also just hitting the ground running because they have the same OC, Jason Beck, coming over from New Mexico. A little bit worried about what the receiving core for Utah, how that shakes out. But I think just being able to hit the ground running is going to be a big benefit for that Utah offense. But I think Dampier could have a monster season. So I've got him 7. And then I think you get into the Baron Morton, Noah Fafita, 2 talented quarterbacks. Maybe like to see a little bit more out of both. I think Connor Wigman also, I think, very capable of having that breakout season. And I think Caden Salter is also on my list of most interesting. Yeah. Pretty good year at Liberty in 2023. Not so dynamic last year. Can he regain that form at Colorado? We'll see what Pat Shurmur can do with this offense.
And again, going back to Hoover, because I think he deserves more talk about this. I don't think the difference between 1 and 6 is all that great. Like, I think they're all sort of like top 25, top 30-ish players in the country. If you told me you thought Hoover was 3, I wouldn't have a problem with it. I think Beck, Robertson, and Hoover are kind of all the same in terms of like how you're evaluating their quality right now. They've all kind of got the same amount of experience. Hoover's a little bit younger than those other guys, but the other teams won more games. Certainly Iowa State with Rocco Beck. So I having him behind those guys, I don't think is an indictment because I think they're all really, really balanced. I think they're really similar. So, but I think the bottom is just a whole cluster, kind of like the ACC, and it's just a whole lot of what's going on. So, okay, let's go to the SEC.
All right, at number 4, I've got DJ Lagway. So I've got him 4th, but honestly, I think he's probably a top 5 quarterback in the nation. I am a little bit worried about his health, so we'll see if any kind of news pops up in the next couple weeks before we get to SEC media days into fall practice. At 3, I've got Lenore Sellers. dynamic second half of the season. The win against Clemson, just a massive leap in play. He is one of my All-America quarterbacks for this year. And at 2, I've got Garrett Nussmeier. I'd like to see the interceptions be a little bit lower, a little bit worried about the revamped offensive line, but I think he's going to be there again at the end of the season. And at 1, I've got Arch Manning. I know it's a projection, and I get it. People probably going to be unhappy. Sark, 5-star quarterback, great weapons. I think that this offense is just going to keep rolling. Manning's going to put up huge numbers in it, and I think it's a big reason why we picked him to win the national championship this year.
All right, in the SEC, number 4, my preseason all-conference picks. Number 4, Garrett Nussmeier, LSU. To your point, offensive line's not going to be as good. I liked where he places the football. I think he places the ball very well and accurately, like at the right shoulders, the right places on these routes. He turned the ball over a little too much, and I think the entire LSU offense just sort of like lagged to the finish a little bit last year. And so I think that was a factor in all of this. We'll see what happens with an improved defense, but I have Nussmeier at number 4, potential first-round pick in the NFL. I have Lenore Sellers at number 3. I think he is a top 5 quarterback in the entire country, but he's number 3 in the SEC. Extraordinary talent, just from a size standpoint. He's Cam Newton with more twitch, which is hard to talk about, and he's Cam Newton with a totally different attitude. And I'm not saying I don't. This is not an anti-Cam Newton being a big personality in the NFL. This is Cam Newton stole laptops and got kicked out of Florida. Lenora Sellers is like a 5.0 student who's very quiet, keeps to himself, and is a very super like a studious, sort of by the book, attention to detail kind of kid apparently. And so I think I got Sellers at 3, but again, I think that's like 4 in the country. So I think very highly. I got DJ at number 2. I think he's the better player if he's fully healthy. If he's fully healthy and we don't know how to, you can't hedge and be like, well, no, he's number 7. Like, he's either injured and he's off the list, or he's fully healthy. And when he's good, I think he's a better prospect, number 1 overall pick type of good 2 years from now. I think he's the number 2 quarterback in the SEC. And I'm with you. I have Arch Manning at number 1 in the conference, and I don't think it's that much of a projection. I think it is based on every bit of information we have about this player, his physical skills, the brief moments we've seen him show an extraordinary amount of talent. There's a track record around this type of player coming in across the board, whether it's Trevor Lawrence at Clemson, Tim Tebow at Florida. This type of player sits for a year and is ready. He sat for 2 years and is now ready. And oh, by the way, this is also this is not reporting necessarily, but when you talk to NFL people, he would have been the first pick in the draft in May of this past year. He would be the number 1 player in next year's draft, and he might be the number 1 player in the draft after that. So this is all from NFL people, not from me. So Arch Manning number 1 in the SEC for me.
Well, I think if you don't think it's a projection, I'm going to show you some of my Twitter mentions. We should read some of the mean tweets I've been getting about Arch Manning being first in my quarterback ranking since way back in February or so. So, sure. But no, I'm glad you brought up the NFL thing, because I know you've mentioned that on the show before, and I think it's a pretty valuable piece of information. When I do these rankings, you can do them a couple different ways. To your point about the preseason, I'm always thinking ahead. I mean, you go back a couple years ago, Tua threw the touchdown pass to beat Georgia. I got just a stream of tweets when I put him at number 2 in the preseason. It's only because of one pass. Caleb Williams wasn't, defined enough at the start of the season. We had him number 1. It's not about what's been in the past. It's about what's going to happen this year. And I think, to your point, talent, system, coaching, weapons around Arch, 5-star talent, everything is aligned for him to have that monster type of season. So if he is not first, I think he will not be too far behind it. So I think he's for sure a top 5 quarterback.
Well, and again, every now and then a projection is about a special player.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean that Dante Moore and Julian Sayin and some of these other guys won't be special. I think many of them will, in particular in the Big Ten. But it's not a complete projection with Arch Manning. I think he's the best quarterback right now. Right now, I think people if he would have come out in the draft last year, which he's not eligible to do, he would have been the number 1 pick.
Yeah.
So it's not that we're we think he could be good. It's that they view him as the best quarterback currently in the sport. And so DJ Lagway hasn't played that much. Like DJ Lagway started like half the season or whatever. So, Dante Moore has a couple of games under his belt. Like it's not like he's played a ton, and I think very highly of him too. Same thing with Bryce Underwood. Zero training camps, 0 training camp practices, 0 practices, 0 games, and we think he could be a really good player. And so it sounds like maybe with Arch we're talking out of both sides of our mouth. I don't think that's the case. I think there's more context around Arch, and none of that has anything to do with his last name, which should be taken into account, honestly, because 3 Hall of Famers. the track record's pretty good.
Yeah, it's hard to ignore Peyton and Eli, and of course Archie being successful quarterbacks as well, and also just being. I guess I'm not sure the right word, but he's been prepared for this moment.
Yes, he has.
I will say, I think on Arch, there's 2 things that I'm going to be watching for this year is the big playability. We saw Ewers at times didn't necessarily connect on all those big plays. I think it'll be there for Arch, and also the mobility. Like you don't want him to run too much because you don't want to get hurt, but I think he gives you more. We saw Sark use him last year. So I think that's 2 things where he could change the way Texas offense operates.
I think Mateer is the most interesting quarterback in this conference. I think he has a chance to be one of the best, but they have to sort of prove it with this offense in this conference with these defenses. I think Diego Pavia is number 6 on my list. I think Gunnar Stockton is super underrated in this conversation. Like everyone's talking about him like he's some like little engine that could come off the bench, walk on, like just from the middle. No, this is a 4-star player who was almost top 100, who has a ton of ability, who stepped into a very difficult situation and handled himself fairly well. So I think if Georgia receivers weren't number 1 in the nation at dropping passes last year, and they weren't playing 2 of the toughest defenses in the world, Texas and then Notre Dame, I don't know how you expect a player to perform better in those situations. I thought he acquitted himself very well. I actually think he's going to have a really good season for Georgia. Plus, they didn't go out and really try to go get somebody real hard. They kind of sent a few you up texts, but that's about it. Taylon Green, Marcel Reed, Austin Simmons, I think is going to be great. Ty Simpson is going to be really good for Alabama. Jackson Arnold, I think, is going to be better for Auburn than he was at Oklahoma. Shapen, Prabula, Aguilar could be good. This is the deepest and best quarterback conference in America.
I think the thing that interests me the most about the SEC is the names like a Ty Simpson, like an Austin Simmons, and Gunnar Stockton. Like you have a collection of quarterbacks that I think we think are all going to be pretty good, but what's the level of pretty good? Are they all conference good? Are they just 7, 8, 9 in the conference? Their degree of breakout probably determines a lot of what you think, for Simpson and Alabama and their national championship hopes. So I think that middle tier of SEC quarterbacks, I feel good about those guys, but I'm wondering what the level of breakout is for those.
So here's the deal. We're already running way behind today. So our non-P4, our G5 quarterbacks, I want to move that to our deep dive into the G5 that's coming up. So we're going to do a whole deep dive into the G5 from a conference preview standpoint. When we do that, we'll talk quarterbacks because we don't have time. Is there any G5 quarterback that is in your top 25 nationally?
Probably not.
So I don't have one either.
Yeah.
That makes this easy. So now, overall, All-American quarterbacks, who you got?
I am going Lenoris Sellers at 4, Garrett Nussmeier at 3, Cade Klubnik at 2, and Arch Manning at 1.
Interesting. I can't believe you did the same thing as I did. I have Drew Aller at 5.
I had Lagway.
Okay.
But
all right, so I have Aller at 5, Lenoris Sellers at 4, DJ Lagway at 2, Cade Klubnik at 1, Cade Klubnik at 2. What am I doing? Am I counting correctly here? Hang on. Drew Aller at 5, Lenoris Sellers 4, DJ Lagway 3, Cade Klubnik 2, Arch Manning 1.
We both agree on Arch. I mean, a lot of SEC names in here. Was it close for you at any of these guys just outside the list, or were you pretty set on the top 4?
I think it's very close. I think Nussmeier's at 6, and I think those top 6 are different. So I think Arch, Klubnik, Lagway, Sellers, Aller, Nussmeier, those 6 are above everybody else. I think there's a line there. Now I have Avery Johnson at 7 because I think he's a superstar. So I've got you. I mean, I've been saying that on the show for a long time. So Avery Johnson at 7, Carson Beck 8. I've got Sam Levitt at 9. I've got Haynes King at 10, John Mateer 11, Luke Altmaier 12, Raiola, Pavia, Becht, Nico, Jennings, Mensa Jennings, Robertson, Mendoza is my list. Go through your top 5 again.
I got Arch Manning at 1. I've got Cade Klubnik at 2, Nussmeier 3, Sellers 4, Lagway 5, and then Aller was 6.
So you have Aller at 6. Okay, so same 6, but you have him even lower than I do. I could see Aller behind Nussmeier, but I think Aller needs to show that one other thing that we talked about already to kind of be into that elite group. So, but I think these 6 are the best 6 above everybody else, in my opinion.
I think Carson.
Do you do 6-team All-Americans in the magazine?
We do 3, and we do 4 online.
Oh, the internet.
Yeah, come to athlonsports.com. You can get all the extra All-American teams and all-conference teams.
Not limited by printing costs on the interstate on the internet.
Yeah, you can.
Or the interstate.
You can check out my 4 All-Conference USA teams. My 4 All-MAC teams.
Send us in the comments or on the social media. Send us your top 4 all-conference picks for any of the 4 conferences and for your All-Americans as well. I'd love to see them. Tell us where we're wrong. If you sign on to the internet to take time out of your day to tell me that I'm an idiot, I am honored by that. Thank you. I do appreciate it. Otherwise, follow Steven on the internet. You can follow me on the internet. Rate, review, subscribe on the podcast app of choice. That's how people find us. It means a lot. So if you've been with us for over 15 years now or 11 years now, we do appreciate all of you. YouTube as well. Thumbs up, notifications turned on. Otherwise, that does it, Steven. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you next time.